Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're trying to teach your child how to clean up after themselves, but they just can't seem to remember how to do it on their own, and it becomes a constant struggle to get them to clean. What is lacking is the motivation to clean up. In this episode of Behavior Nation's education video series, we will be talking about different reinforcement contingencies that can help you strengthen the skills you want to teach your child. In this video, we will be talking about what is reinforcement and also how to use it effectively. So what is reinforcement? Reinforcement is a consequence or reward that follows immediately after a behavior that can increase the likelihood of a child engaging in it again. In terms of skills teaching, it can help to establish and strengthen the skills already being taught. For example, when learning how to follow simple instructions, if a child gets access to a favorite toy each time they follow the instruction to sit down, they'll learn that good things happen when they follow instructions and will be likely to sit down again when instructed to do so. In other words, it helps to create motivation for the child to perform the desired skill. In order to use reinforcement effectively, there's some rules you need to follow. First is making sure that the rewards you are choosing are contingent. What we mean by that is that they're only delivered after the desired skill is performed. So for example, in the previous example, one way you could get your child to sit down is say, first sit down, then you get your toy. Another important thing to remember is make sure you're not providing the reinforcement when your child engages in challenging behavior. For example, when working on communication skills, a child only gets access to desired items when they use their words to ask for it, not when they whine or throw a tantrum. If you're giving them the reinforcer while they're tantruming to get them to stop tantruming, that is actually considered bribery. And we discuss bribery in a different video that goes into detail on how to recognize and avoid using bribery instead of reinforcement. You can click the link in the description below if you would like more information. Another point to remember about how to use reinforcement effectively is that reinforcers are the same thing as rewards. To be effective, reinforcers must be things that your child actually wants. For example, your child might be really excited by the idea of going to the park, but could not care less about going to the dentist. So the more desired the item, the higher the motivation, the more likely your child would want to continue displaying the skill you're trying to teach. The next point to remember is immediacy. When using a reinforcer for skills teaching, it is important to deliver the reinforcement immediately after they perform the desired skill, ideally between 1 to 3 seconds. Delaying reinforcement can lead to accidentally reinforcing unrelated or unwanted behaviors. For example, when you're trying to teach your child how to learn different colors and you hold up a pink crayon and you ask, "What color is this?" and they say pink. But for some reason, you don't have the reinforcer right away, and while you're struggling to find the reinforcer, your child says pink, red, blue, and then you give them their reinforcer. What you accidentally reinforced is that pink is actually called pink, red, blue instead of just simply pink. The next thing to remember is the rule of satiation versus deprivation. Satiation means your child has had simply too much of that reinforcer and their motivation to work for it becomes lower. So for example, after eating a big lunch, chances are your child will be full, making them less likely to want to work for edible reinforcers, such as their favorite snack or favorite drink. If you want to learn more about edible reinforcers and actually the different types of reinforcement you can use, we also discuss it in the reinforcement versus bribery video, which you can find in the link below. The next thing to remember is deprivation, which equals high motivation. What we mean by deprivation is just making sure that whatever you use as the reinforcer, they only get when they perform the skill that you want to teach them. So for example, if one of the few times a child gets access to certain preferred items, like a favorite toy, is during skills teaching sessions, they are more likely to want to work for the item and will therefore be more motivated to do what is being asked for them in order to get access to the item. The next thing to remember is free access equals satiation and low motivation. What we mean by free access is regardless of whether or not they're doing the skill you want them to learn, your child gets access to the reinforcer. So for example, if using an edible reinforcer like a favorite snack, your child will be less motivated to do what is being asked for them during skills teaching if they know that they can have access to the snack, regardless of whether or not they perform the skill being asked. The next thing to remember is the size and magnitude of the reinforcer. The way the reinforcer is delivered also plays a role in creating motivation. So what we mean by size and magnitude is that if you give them too much of something, it could lead to lower motivation because that can lead to satiation. The way the reinforcer is delivered also plays a role in creating motivation. So for example, if you give too much of something, it can lead to satiation and they're not going to want to work for it anymore. So if you're working for chips and you give them an entire bag of chips every single time they finish 2 homework questions, then for the next 2 homework questions, they're not going to be as motivated to complete it because at that point, they're probably full because they just had too many chips. Another thing to remember is that too little of the reinforcer can lead to lower motivation and increased frustration. So again, with the homework example, if after every 2 questions that they answer, all they get is a tiny little fraction of a chip, that might not be enough to create motivation and could just lead to frustration because your child might think it's not worth it. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this information useful. If you have any questions, email us at info@behaviornation.com or call 844-262-8466. Have a great day.